The Dead Sea Scrolls and Modern Scholarship by Solomon Zeitlin, Chapter 2, The Thanksgiving Hymns. The other. Bleh, there's a way to start. The, the other scroll published by the Mossad Balik was the Thanksgiving Hymns, fragments of which had been published by by the late Professor Sucknick. I pointed out in one of my articles that nothing in these hymns indicates that they were written during the Second Commonwealth. Psalms and thanksgiving hymns, of course, were written by Jews during the Middle Ages, and I quoted a beautiful hymn from the Sefer HaJasher, written in the biblical style, which displays poetic qualities greater than those in the scrolls. And he gives a whole paragraph of Hebrew. To this hymn may be added others which were written in an equally poetic biblical style. I would not return to this subject if it were not for the article by Dr. Sunny, A Hymn Against Heretics, wherein he maintained that the author of the hymns was a Gnostic, and that they referred to the trials and anxieties of a dissent group. He connected Rabbi Meir with the Gnostic group. Sunni says none other than the famous 2nd century teacher Rabbi Meir, later a pillar of the Mishnah, seems to have been compelled to leave Palestine owing to his leadership of a group with Gnostic leanings. He adds, "This statement may appear exaggerated, but there are many indications that Rabbi Meir did not follow the authoritative Jewish course of his time." He continues, "We have here indicate only a few supporting instances." To maintain that Rabbi Meir was a leader of a Gnostic group or even had leanings toward it by citing a few isolated adic passages is not a proper method of scholarly investigation. We have numerous utterances and halakh discussions by Rabbi Meir in the Talmud. If he had been a leader or even had Gnostic leanings, this would have been reflected in his halakot. Halakot represented and laid down the mode of life of the Jews, and Sunni should have looked for corroboration in them and not in stories and legends. Even his citations from the Agada are not altogether authentic, and some of them are distorted by misquoting. To support his theory, Sunni quotes the conflict of Rabbi Meir with Rabbi Simeon Gimiel, and maintain that Rabbi Simeon's severity towards Rabbi Meir was more than personal dislike. Even if we assume that Sunni's connection is correct, this does not prove that Rabbi Meir was the leader of a Gnostic group. However, Sunni does not tell the story in full. Rabbi Nathan also was involved in the opposition toward Rabbi Simeon, which was not personal but against the institution of the patriarchs. Rabbi Meir, who was joined by Rabbi Nathan, wanted to restore the situation which existed before Hillel, wherein the head of the Sanhedrin was not only a Nasai, but also an Abbot Den. Rabbi Meir failed in his opposition. Rabbi Simeon B. Gimiel continued to be the sole authority of the Sanhedrin. Dr. Soni also refers to the Palestinian Talmud, MK, where it is related that an attempt had been made to excommunicate Rabbi Meir. This attempt was not because of Rabbi Meir's leanings toward heresies, but on account of his defense of the law against the rule of the majority. Rabbi Eliezer and others, including Rabbi Akabe, ben Mahalalel were excommunicated for the same reason. Some finds so bleh, Sony finds another proof that Rabbi Meir had connections with other sects in the account of his journey to Asia to intercalculate the year. Significant, he says, is uh, let's start over. Quote, significant, end quote, he says, quote, is Rabbi Meir's journey to Asia in order to proclaim a leap year. The calendar has always been one of the controversial subjects among the various sects, end quote. There was no controversies among the Jews on the question of the calendar in the time of Rabbi Meir in the 2nd century AD. He says CE, but again, I'm not going to entertain that stupidity. The Sadducees were no longer in existence, and the Judean Christians had adopted a separate religion. The reason for Rabbi Meir's journey to Asia to intercalculate a year was due to the Hadrianic persecutions. The Jews of Palestine had been forbidden to perform their religious rites. Dr. Sony quotes another passage to substantiate his theory. He says, quote, notably, his, Rabbi Meir's comment, are on the serpent, and gives him Hebrew. In proportion to the greatness of the serpent was its fall. Italics are Sony's. You can't see that, but there are italics. One cannot help thinking of the well-known Gnostic sect, the Ophites, or the Naasians, who worship the serpent. End quote. The phrase, Hebrew, may not have been used by Rabbi Meir. It may mean that there was a tradition of what he had said. In reality, he may never have uttered it. My criticism, however, is not based on this possibility. Sony did not quote the entire passage in full. It reads as follows, and he gives Hebrew, but I think he gives a translation for this, and quote, in accordance with the distinction of the serpent was his downfall. He was the most subtle of among the beasts, and he was cursed from among the beasts, end quote. The author of the passage plays on the words, Hebrew. The serpent was more subtle than any beast, more Hebrew. The serpent was cursed from among all the beasts, more Hebrew. Either Dr. Sony did not quote the concluding words because he did not see the midrash, or he did not consider it necessary to quote them, though they are the essence of the entire midrash, and he thereby gave the readers a wrong idea of this midrashic utterance. He did not even introduce a weak argument to support his contentions that Rabbi Meir was a leader of a Gnostic group. His entire contention is a distortion of a historical fact. His historical method is faulty in that he neglected all the halakot of Rabbi Meir. He should have examined Rabbi Meir's halakot first and foremost in order to understand the period of the sages, or the character of the sages themselves, or their religious outlook. The halakot should be examined as they are the main source for a scholarly historical investigation. Sony gives one hymn with a translation and comments on the words, it's Hebrew. He says, quote, it may be noted in passing that Rabbi Eliezer of Modin includes among those who have no share in the world to come him who condemns the festivals. It should be borne in mind that Rabbi Eliezer of Modin is identified with the Doshe Reshumit, that Reshumat cycle or circle, Mechalita ed Weiss, page 55, I guess that's a citation, to which our author also probably belonged, end quote. Dr. Sony is surely aware that the Karaites accused the Rabbinites of profaning the holidays in the Karaite marriage contact. Bleh. In the Karaite marriage contract, there is a clause in which the newly married couple willingly promise to observe the festivals of God, i.e., according to the Karaite customs. The well-known Karaite Haddoshai accused the Rabbinites of profaning the festivals. Salman ben Yerushim, in his polemic against Sadaya, use identical language. Dr. Sony's statement that the Mechaleta, I'm sure I'm pronouncing a lot of these names right, identifies Rabbi Eliezer of Modin with the Doshe Reshumat is unfounded. Nowhere in the Mechaleta is the sage identified with the Doshe Reshumat. In commenting on the word, I guess Hebrew, Dr. Sony says, quote, "It may be noted that in the 2nd century Belial, Belial, sometimes I can't read a common word. Let's try that again. It may be noted that in the 2nd century Belial seems to have become almost a technical term for heresy." End quote. Apparently, he overlooked the fact that in Karaite literature, the term Belial was employed against the Rabbinites. On the words, that's Hebrew, Sony says, except for Genesis 4:14, is another seldom used in the Bible. It emerges later under Hellenistic influence. So, for instance, by Ben Sira, it seems from the above quotation that he wants to show that this hymn was written during the Hellenistic period. These words are frequently used in the Karaite doxology. This hymn, as well as other hymns, can be shown because of similarity of words, spellings, and misspellings to belong to Karaite literature. In this scroll, the sentence, is Hebrew, quote, "I thank you, my God," end quote, occurs in the Bible. Yeah. Jeez, let's start over. "I thank you, my God," occurs. In the Bible, we have the following, quote, "I thank you, O my Lord," end quote. The phrase, "I thank you, O my God," does not occur in the Bible, nor in the apocryphal or apocalyptic literature, where hymns praising God appear quite frequently. And Josephus does not use the expression. So far as I know, this phrase, in Hebrew, occurs for the first time in the Karaite doxologies and also in the medieval hymns. Hence, it is very strange that such a sentence should occur in this scroll if it is of great antiquity. I trust that my colleague of the Hebrew University who proclaimed the scroll to be of the Second Commonwealth will endeavor to refute me by showing that this sentence, Hebrew, occurs in the literature of the Second Jewish Commonwealth. It is maintained that in this scroll the word El is written in the Old Hebrew script. The editor marked 3 instances. Personally, I am not sure that they are in the Old Hebrew script. The word El occurs more than 20 times in the scroll. The word El was written in the square Hebrew script in all the places except 3. Why did the 3 differ from the rest? What is the reason the author made these 3 differ from the others? And that's the end of that chapter.